Hi, I'm Rod Gilley. Welcome to Relax and Chat. Today we have the privilege of chatting with Mr. T.S. Hottle. He's a science fiction writer originally from Cleveland. He now resides in the Cincinnati suburb of Deer Park with his wife Candy. When he isn't working on one of his many novels, he is a software developer. Mr. Hottle has a long series of books about the compact universe. They chronicle the many events arising from humans' disastrous encounter with the species known as the Gelt. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very happy to introduce science fiction writer T.S. Hottle. Hey, T.S., how are you doing today?
Good, good. How are you doing?
Not too bad, not too bad. Had a little technical difficulty earlier, but all is going well now. All right. I think we'll just go ahead and jump right into the questions, quick and easy. The first question is pretty easy. Do you consider yourself to be a pantser or a plotter, and why?
Well, I started out as a pantser. Well, I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but when I started upping my output, it's you don't have time to go out into the weeds, and so I started plotting. And I had to kind of develop the mentality of an outline is not an outline; it's a very thin first draft. You know, you're just telling the bare bones of the story. So, but outlining definitely helps.
Cool. All right. And our second question, as you know, these are five standard questions I asked every author.
Mhm.
The second one I think is pretty interesting. How do you balance your day-to-day life with the demands of writing?
I tend to schedule things. I don't want to say rigorously, but like there's a 2 hours first thing in the morning. I get up way before everybody else, and that's when I do. That's my quiet time. I do reading. I do writing. Get a little exercise in, and so on. Just very quiet time, and then the tail end of that is writing. Um, so I do that. I've been scheduling like breaks throughout the day to say, okay, I'm going to knock out 200 words here, 200 words there. It'll be a little more for NaNoWriMo, which means Dragon has just become my best friend. Um, so yeah, it's things I do that. Evenings I'll sit and I'll edit or I'll work on reference material or whatever. And of course, right now I've got like a big traffic jam because my editing business is moving just a little bit. So it's like I got to edit for a client. I got to project for another publisher coming out, and it was like I had to alternate between those, and it's like, oh, and I have to get this done too. And then sometimes a day job, there's just things that will not, go until after hours, and I have to do that.
Yeah.
So I kind of have to watch how I schedule things because otherwise you can get like, it's like a 30 car pileup on the freeway if you're not careful.
Happens to me a lot.
Yeah.
All right. Now, this is going to be a tough one with you because you've written many novels, but I've got to ask, out of all the stories you've written, which would you say is your favorite that you most enjoy?
You thought about published or non-published?
Either one.
I would probably have to say the next suicide novel, which is Suicide Gambit, and that's going to be the middle of the arc that I'm working on. It's a kind of a watershed moment for Tishla. It's one of the beta readers said that JT has come into his own. It really solidifies that mother-son relationship they've developed over the course of the series. Plus, it's very rare you see a guy who gets nearly disemboweled cut somebody's head off, and then of course promptly go to the hospital and like, I don't feel good, yeah. Oh, spoiler alert. But that was it was a tough one to write, but it was a fun one to write. And then after that, I kind of kept it light. I sent a couple of the characters off to a frontier planet to get into all sorts of trouble. I called it Thelma and Louise in space, but yeah. But Suicide Gambit, it's going to be kind of a heavy novel, but it's a good novel. It kind of really kicks the series forward.
Mhm.
Changes the political landscape, but at the same time, two of those crazy kids get to, finally get together. So,
Ah,
yeah.
cool. Sounds great. Do you have a expected release date for that one?
Given the current rhythm, yeah, it's probably going to be out next summer, late next summer.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's going to be a follow up after the next novel, which is Another Way to Die.
Cool. All right. And let's see. This is an interesting one. You've written so many scenes over a lot of years. This might be hard to remember. But can you think of a scene that was just really hard to get it done, to get that scene right?
Oh, there was a chapter in Storming, and it took it wasn't so bad in the first draft. I wrote the first draft as a screenplay just to get the feel of writing a screenplay, even though it was going to have to be redone in prose. But I got to a certain point where JT and Tishla had to kind of define their relationship. They weren't just former enemies. They weren't just, he wasn't just a kid with a crush on her. They kind of had to define what they were to each other. And the chapter went out to about 20,000 words at one point because they kept dancing around certain things. I thought, all right, just let it happen. And once I got the final draft, that got chopped down to size, and I was actually able to add some scenes in and still come in shorter, just to get him to deal with his, shipmates and so on, what they wanted to do. Yeah, but that was a tough one because it was like the hardest. Every time I rewrote it, it would just get longer and longer and longer. And finally, it was like, okay, we're gonna go do that scene now. If I do that scene, will you two shut up and leave me alone? You have to do that sometimes.
Oh, so it almost became a novella within a novel.
Yeah, exactly. I think if I'd have left it alone, if I kept trying to write it the original way I wrote it, it probably would have turned about 30,000 words. Nobody wants to read half a novel as chapter 17. So,
all right, this last question that I ask these of all writers. I can think of 5 scenes almost immediately that I love. This one should be pretty easy for you. Out of all your stories, what was your favorite scene that you ever wrote, that you really enjoyed writing that one?
There's like a set of several scenes, like when JT meets Mitsuko, they start training him on swordplay, which is actually rather unusual. Most people pick up guns, but they were on a planet where there were friendly Gelt, and they were using, they're like, hey, let's learn to use swords and we can fight these people better. The Gelt were like, oh, bladed weapons. We're so into this, there were always the scenes where every time JT gets a little stubborn, Suicide comes out and has a sparring match with him because she wants to knock some sense into him and possibly knock him on his ass, which she does more frequently than he wins. And those are always kind of fun to write. Like, you're sitting there and I'm trying to get, the sword play right. So hopefully I've got like some basics down, and but it's like they're blocking, and a lot of times what'll happen, especially in the earlier scenes that I wrote between the two doing that, like JT will sit there and think, I've got you now. And it's like going, well, I beat you. And then she'll like take her leg, hook it around the back of his, and just, collapse his knee. And the next thing you know, she's up on top and going, do you yield? It's like, yeah, you have to ask that question. Okay, when you're doing a sparring match with swords, you have to ask that question. Otherwise, the fight's not over. And it was those were fun to write. And it was like amazing. Because I only did, I think, like one with him and Mitsuko, who's a real sword master in a bunch. But there was always like I think in one of the later books that are, still sitting on the hard drive somewhere, he's there's actually one I think that's set on a swampy Venus, and he has just come out of this clinic to be treated for, he or his wife, one of the two, came out of this clinic to be treated for something, and he's pretty much done, recovered, and he's like, I don't want to go back on duty. I just want to go back to Amargosa and fly my little freighter thing and just, I want to be Firefly. I don't want to be Star Trek. And Suicide comes and goes, what the hell's your problem? And he is like in a pair of shorts, nothing else, barefoot, because that planet is hot,
Uh-huh.
It's, just dripping in sweat. And he's like, no, I'm not going to do it. And of course, he gets knocked on his ass and he does it. And we have a novel. So,
All right.
it makes the
I
main
was,
character's life a lot easier.
yeah. I was half afraid that you would pick as your favorite scene something to do with one of your characters named Lizzie. My wife is just outside my office, and I think, I was having visions of shoes flying and such. So I'm glad
Yeah.
you got around that one very smoothly.
Well, she did all the scenes she needs to be. And
Now
that's all
to a
I'm
part
going to
that
say about that.
I'm very excited about this next part. I can't wait. I haven't read it myself yet, so I'm so excited to read it. I would love to hear about royal orders.
Well, the short version is Navy Special Forces officer Mitsuko Yamato goes to a swampy Venus called Aphrodite. Yeah, get it? Venus, Aphrodite. To take on a cult leader who's causing chaos on an interstellar level. He's responsible. There is this religion called Cubism, and it's actually in a mainstream setting, it's actually very peaceful. They're calm. It's almost like Eastern philosophy or Eastern spiritualism. But there's a subset, and this guy's really exploiting it for his own ends, that goes around and like they've blown up a mosque and they blew up a satire magazine. So where the mosque was blown up, they actually said, well, if an infidel draws Muhammad flipping these guys the bird, it's okay because we're not doing it. And of course, they were kind of ticked because they got hit too. And they're blowing up some things. And there is a scene in one of the novellas, I think it's The Immortals, where Marcus Lightman and another character witness a restaurant nearby get blown up, and suddenly these two are now the senior delegates from their planet. And of course, Lightman goes, well, it's those damn Cubists. And of course, we all know it wasn't, because Lightman got promoted. So, there was something else going on there. But they try to blow up her boyfriend, who just happens to be a king, not just any king. Okay. There's kings in various places around the compact. This king actually runs an entire core world, an entire planet. This would be like he was the governor of California.
Uh-huh.
And she's like, oh, no, this will not stand. And she goes and says, okay, how do I get a lead on the Cubist? Well, go talk to the founder. I don't want to talk to a terrorist. He's not a terrorist. Go talk to him. He can tell you why some people are terrorists. And it turns out his most ardent disciple is Suicide.
Oh.
And so Suicide says, okay, I've had it with this guy. Come on. We're going to go to Aphrodite because that's where I met him. And we're going to take him on. And then they get captured. Mitsuko escapes. And then hilarity ensues involving giant robots and then run through the jungle. And totally did not rip off Heart of Darkness for about 5 chapters. No, none whatsoever. And then, of course, creative use of a nuclear bomb trigger, which is bad enough, never mind the bomb. You fuse the bomb and bad things still happen, and creative use of that as a self-defense weapon. So, I will not say how she used that or what happens when she uses that, but it's just kind of like she wakes up on a ship going, I feel awful. Well, that's, and there's her fiance, Edward, like going, well, that's good, honey, because you look awful. Yeah.
Now, Royal Orders is actually available right now. It's on the market.
Yes, it is.
Awesome. I'll make sure there's a link in the description where our audience can hurry up and get them a copy of that. I'll be first in line. Can't wait.
And then if you live in the Cincinnati area, the Tome Bookstore in Mount Washington has a few copies of it.
Oh,
I would greatly appreciate if you are locals, if you would stop by, say hello to them, tell them TS Hottle sent you, and I especially would be grateful if you bought a copy. But also, if you go to their website, they will sell books through bookshop.org, and 4 titles of mine are available through that service. I'm trying to get them all in. Checkmate was available for a while. For some reason, it disappeared. So I'm trying to find out what's going on with that.
okay. And then I understand that you're releasing a second edition of Children of Amargosa. Is that
Yes, I am. And Lizzie is still in all the scenes that she needs to be.
right?
You know,
Well, my wife's just going to have to learn to deal with it, huh?
I think we had that conversation months and months ago. But anyway,
Yeah.
so what I did was I'm calling this the expanded version of the Amargosa trilogy. And for children, I added on the novella Give Me Shelter, which was available as a standalone ebook and part of another omnibus. But I thought, well, let's put these two together. I put it at the end. Originally, it was the first 10 chapters of children, but the character Dabra had such a boring arc until the space station blows up. After that, things get real interesting for her. Like, I can't make this all one character, but I can't sit there and just annoy the reader with, I want to go to school. I don't want to go to school here. I want to go back to my home world, or I want to go to TN or something like that. It's just like, God, what a whiny little brat, So instead, I thought, well, let's redo this. So the first thing you see is actually her, because I think she's actually the most interesting character in the series. I just don't get to do as much with her as I want to. And I said, let's do it where the first thing you see, and in fact, the first thing you see of anything is the space station exploding, and she's in a life pod watching this happen, screaming, it's like, congratulations, kid, you just grew up. And then, hilarity ensues. Yeah. So I thought, well, let's take the first 10 chapters. I stripped out, I spared Davra those boring scenes, and a couple make it back into a later one as like flashback scenes. But other than that, I just, I thought the whole arc didn't work. I said, well, let's focus on how JT ended up on Amargosa. I mean, who is he and why do we even care? There's mention of being like a rich kid. And we get the whole story in Give Me Shelter, where he's, his parents are like the Rothschilds, his mother is, his father is, an admiral. Mm-hmm. And, he's kind of hates it in the gilded cage, and he goes out joyriding, and he looks like 5 years older than he is. So he's managed to give a few women some attention he really shouldn't be giving them. And they don't seem to mind. So he gets caught one time too many, and they said, we're sending you to military school. In fact, we are going to send you to VMI. We're going to send you to VMI. And he's sitting there going, oh, no, this is not going to happen. He's going to go run off to this other planet that's rich. And this guy who's always helping him with things is like, okay, I just got told if I help you, I'm fired. And he's like, well, if I'm going to get fired, I'm going to make it count. Puts him on a freighter. Already knows that he is prone to wormhole sickness. So he sends him to an outer colony, Amargosa. And of course, the first thing JT does when he arrives on Amargosa is he gets discovered by a crewman and promptly throws up on her boots. And by the end of the story, it's like, he's with the farmer's daughter, and he thinks, I like it here. I'm going to stay here. I just feel like I got a purpose now. I was like, yeah, your purpose, you're programming farm equipment, and you're, a farmhand. But that's what he likes, and he's like, okay, maybe I'll go into the Navy like my dad. He's pretty much written off his mother's company, which eventually will come back to haunt him. But I'm not going to give too much away on that.
Well, I've got to say, I read Children of Amargosa, the first edition, and as you know, I'm a huge fan. I read that book, and it was 2:30 a.m. And I had to work the next morning, and I could not put that book down. It was
I've,
so
I've,
exciting, and I loved it so much. And I've read probably 6 of your novels since then, and I've got to say, wow, I'm a huge fan. I know that you already have a lot of fans, but you can certainly count me amongst them.
yeah.
Okay, I'm going to ask you the question, since we have some time left here, that I know every reader of all of your novels has wondered. How did you come up with the gelt?
I Well, I had Children of Amargosa on the back burner, and I said, oh, I'm just going to do these like outside novellas, kind of show what's going on beyond Amargosa. What does this whole universe look like? And so I wrote one. It was originally called the first one's free, and it was called Beyond or Before Amargosa, and it was called. It came out under different names. And eventually, this is going to get absorbed into another novella called Tishla. I'm just going to call the whole thing Tishla's Journey. So it's all one point of view and a lot more seamless. But I thought, okay, the first part is from Tishla's first husband / lover, Kai, from his point of view. And he's been handed this planet by his family that's kind of a lemon. You can't grow crops there or anything like that. And they're constantly having food riots and that. And finally, this guy just shows up, and he's an alien, and his name is Mark. And that should tickle the back of your brain a little bit, but I spell Mark funny, so it doesn't make any sense. And the idea was that you don't think anything of Kai and Tishla. It's like, okay, I've heard of humans called Kai. Tishla kind of sounds human. And he comes out, and he's offering this thing called a potato. And there's like a whole ship full of them, and they go up and they check it out, and they go, well, maybe this will work. And they go back to, his residence, and Tishla is like, getting a little frisky with him, like, you should do this, and he's kind of stressed out. She just proceeds to relieve the stress. And as you can see where this is going, it doesn't look like it normally does, where, it's, push the woman down onto her back and climb over top, and I'll leave the R-rated and X-rated stuff to your imagination. It's like he's kissing down her chest, and he's going down her belly, and you're thinking, oh, so he's going to begin with that. Okay. And there's a lot of women thinking, oh, he's a keeper. Oh no, he stopped at the middle, stopped at her navel, and that's where the fun begins. And that's when the light bulb goes on in your head. Oh, Mark's human. These are the aliens. That was the whole thing I was trying to do with it. And I think when I rewrite it, I may kind of play that up a little more. That way, if somebody picks that as like the first or second novel that they read, be like, oh, okay. And then you understand, as you go on and read it, you understand why the Gelt are seizing Amargosa and Gilead and Fariga. But that was kind of a fun thing. Was I wanted a way to make them, they seem human when you meet them, and then I wanted to do something that was just so blatantly, obviously alien. I thought, well, use a reproductive system, and then on top of that, that's like a source of humor. Like when JT goes to Hanar, he's with, he's doing some training with Tishla's one of Tishla's Gelt sidekicks, and they're talking about reproduction, and he says, I don't, he's like going, the way most humanoids do it, or most primates do it, is what they call them. It's kind of gross, which is, where the equipment is, where we keep it. And apparently it's the most common arrangement for mammalian primates throughout, from whatever planet. And he says, yeah, I know we're the weird ones. And JT makes the comment and says, well, it's gross. If it didn't feel good, nobody would do it because it's gross. I mean, come on, look what you're doing, And they're having themselves a big old time about that. And, and then, somebody blows up a bunch of trainees, and, JT goes off on a rampage. So hell, I already can say.
Well, I want to comment very quickly that while I am a horror writer, The lighting is not intentional. I don't
Bum, bum, bum.
I don't have the right equipment yet, and I was relying on a flashlight that has decided to go out. So I look like a horror writer just because my flashlight died.
Well, it is a
I
dark and
was really
stormy
curious.
night.
We have a couple moments left, and you don't really have to go anywhere with this, but I'm just curious. If I'm not mistaken, from start to finish, the Compact Universe has currently more than 10 novels, novels and novellas.
Yeah, 3, 6, 9, 12, 13, and then at the moment it is 16. Although 3 of them, because I'm slowly separating from my last publisher, I'm slowly separating from him, and just 4 of them got taken out so I could give me shelter back. But logistically saying, "Oh, I need you to turn those back on," it's a good time to start rearranging in that. So there's probably going to be fewer going forward. Like 3 of them are going to get rolled into 1 volume. They'll still be standalone stories, but 1 volume, because I think thematically they work best together. The Marylandists, the Immortals, and the Exile, because it's the same group of characters. I think those are going to get rolled into their own novel. Roots of War and Tishla are going to get rolled into one called Tishla's Journeys, and that's because there's a lot of overlap, and I think it'd work better if it was just seamlessly one point of view all the way
through. Wide scope view, and I don't know how much of this you'll want to share with your audience just yet, but I got to ask, in a wide scope view, where do you see the Compact Universe? Will it implode, be invaded for real? Will it just fall apart? What do you see when you look out in the Compact Universe future?
It just gets bigger, and especially after Suicide Gambit, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger,
Cool.
Right. The catalyst for all this is a nude wedding, but I won't say whose it was.
Oh yeah, that's the way to do it. Let it end.
Yeah, somebody is showing off his scars, and he's not gonna have the most fun wedding night. But
well, I've seen
you about halfway through the novel, you've pretty much figured out who I'm talking about. But but the rest of you who don't know what I'm talking about, that's gonna be next summer.
Well, I've seen some of your interviews on other channels, and I knew that today would be very entertaining. I'm sure the audience has loved every word of this. And so I have to ask, at some point in the future, maybe when you bring out another novel, if you like, you're certainly welcome to come back on the show.
Oh, absolutely.
If your schedule allows for it, I'd love to have you back. If you like, you can say a few words to the audience. We've got a few minutes left, and then we'll go ahead and wrap it up.
Yeah, please buy my books. I have a mortgage. I have an ailing wife, and so my credit card bills have gone up as we've tried to adjust and stuff.
What do you think of that, audience? We have an honest writer admitting that he has a mortgage.
I'm broke. My day job, even though it pays well, is not covering everything. So
yeah,
I don't want to Uber anymore.
Well, I tell you what, I will have a copy of Royal Orders in hand very soon.
Yes.
And with your permission, I may even do a book review on it, because
awesome.
I'm really looking forward to that one.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I think Santa can arrange that.
But that sounds fantastic.
Maybe
well, again, Tom, T.S. Hottle, it's been such a super pleasure to have you on the show. A lot of really cool insights, a lot that and I'm sure the audience didn't expect. It is a very happy surprise, and really, it's really been a great time. Thank you for coming on.
Oh, thank you.
All right, and to the audience, Mr. T.S. Hottle, one of the finest science fiction writers I've ever known of. We'll definitely try to get him on the show again. To any writer out there, you want to join the fun? See the last slide on this video. I'm welcoming all writers of any level of experience. It's a half an hour to tape it, and it's an awful lot of fun. Like Mr. Hottle will say, "You've had a ball, haven't you, sir?"
It's been all your pleasure. You've had a nice time seeing me. Come back when you can't stay longer. No.